Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today is one of my favorite kinds of episodes ever to do here on Pod Save Chocolate, and that is to do a tasting. And today's tasting is going to be of 4 bars and a new nut spread from the Prescott, Arizona-based, and I'm also here in Prescott, Orinoco Chocolate Company. In fact, they're just about 2 kilometers down the road from where it is I am now. Before we get into today's episode, a little bit of housekeeping. Just no matter where you might be watching today, whether it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, go into the comments, the live chat or the comments, and let me know where in the world you're connecting from. So you're connecting from somewhere in the United States, or if you're connected from somewhere internationally, put it into the comments. I'll get the comment up on the screen, give you a quick shout out and say thank you for watching me here today. But if you have a question or a comment about anything I might be discussing today, you can also put it into the comments and I will get to it. The next bit of housekeeping is to say that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. So this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. And I want to point out that there's a little note at the top of it that says, we recently experienced a server outage, and complete and total server outage. The virtual private server at the internet service provider in their Los Angeles data center was attacked by what appears to be a ransomware virus, and it took down the entire node and was unreachable for 5 days. Fortunately, my developer and I were able to have a backup plan. And we moved the server, and this is where it is right now, to the server that also holds the forum site. And we're in a holding position right there until we can find a new home for the Chocolate Life. I really don't want to have the Chocolate Life and the forum site on the same server in case something like this ever happens again. I thought I had adequate backup plans. It turns out I didn't have adequate backup plans. And so the site, I've lost about a week's worth of information on the site that I've had to reproduce. And fortunately, we're pretty much back to where it was before the server outage, for which I am incredibly grateful, because I know that many other people were not able to recover quite as quickly. I was only unreachable for 24 or 30 hours, which is still a long time when you're on the internet. But I do want to point out that if you are not a member of the Chocolate Life, you can click on the join button here. And if you click on the join button, there's always a free membership tier. There always has been a free membership tier. But if you do have the resources to support what it is that I'm doing, either on a monthly basis for as little as $5 a month, or annually, I appreciate the work. I appreciate your support financially, right? Because it's what helps keep the lights on and will help pay for moving the server infrastructure to a more secure place, making sure that the Chocolate Life and the Pod Save Chocolate can continue. All right, now that that's over, let's go to today's episode, which is about Orinoco Chocolate Company. And for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I create a post on the Chocolate Life, and this is the post for today's episode. It provides a run of show. I mean, these are not scripted, and I will interact with whatever comments come up in the order that they come up as I see them, right? But it provides the links to watch the archive and other things. And if there's anything that's brought up, so for example, oh yeah, here are the 4 bars I'm tasting today, the photographs from the website, and here is a link to Orinoco Chocolate in case you want to buy their chocolate. The link to the website is here. So having said that, let me close this window, and what we'll do is we'll start the tasting. And because there's not really anything that I'm going to refer to in the site today, I'm going to go back to this view. So this is the first thing we're tasting today. It is a 65% single origin dark chocolate. The beans come from the Dominican Republic. And as you can see, it's a pretty distinctive packaging. If we were to put them, side by side, and you were to think about seeing these, I can't get them both in focus at the same time, but if you were to see this on a shelf in a store, it puts together a really, really beautiful and attractive planogram. And so I think they've done a really, really good job in terms of the packaging art and the way the branding is incorporated. You'll notice that the branding is incorporated in a different way. So here's the branding. This is the 85% Patanemo, and here's the 65% Dominican Republic. So the way the branding has been incorporated is different for each package, which I think is really quite lovely. One thing that they do, which I think is also really, really nice, right, is that where does this art come from? And it says, and this one is that the pattern, right, the pattern on the back and on the front were inspired by indigenous Taino cave art. And hey, guess what? The Taino were very present before the arrival of Europeans, and they're still present there today, but they were the dominant peoples on maybe the Taino and the Sarawaks. I need to think about that. But the Taino were present on the island of, Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic. And so what they've done is they've connected the art that they're using on the package with the location of where the beans come from. This is also true of this next one, the 85% Patanemo, right? The art on this was inspired by indigenous Wayuu art, and the Wayuu are native to sort of the border of Colombia and Venezuela. So is Southeast Colombia, Northwest Venezuela? I thinking about that in the map. So I think that's a really, really fabulous idea. And it might give you, if you're a chocolate maker, an idea about how to incorporate this really, really deep connection between what we think of chocolate now and historically, cacao is the Theobroma cacao is the food of the gods, is to make that connection. So one of the things that is unusual about all of the bars that Orinoco makes is that they are all sweetened with maple sugar. So this is a late harvest maple sugar. They don't use any refined white sugar in their products. They do have other products where they do use other sugars, for example, coconut sugar, but the bars are made with coconut sugar. And they are trading as directly as they possibly can with the farmers in Venezuela. 3 of the bars use beans from Venezuela. This one, these from the Dominican Republic, the logistics, the export, import, all of those things are handled through with the help of the Resec family in Dominican Republic. I've been fortunate enough to have visited with the Resec family, meet with Don Hector, and had a hand in the Hacienda Helvecia, which is in Eastern DR, in being connected with Falkland for their Hacienda Helvecia bars. So again, now through Resec, but my connection there it has been, oh my gosh, I first met Maximiliano Wax, I think in 2010 in Bolivia. Max is their international sales director, but I'm off charts. So what I did, I haven't eaten any of these things before I began. Right, all I did was cut the tops off, and so one of the first things that I like to do, cut the tops off the bags. They're all zippered, reclosable, and so what I've done, I like to do is just stick my nose in it, and the predominant sense that I get just from these first deep breaths is a roasty note is the best way to top it. It's not over roasted, it's not burnt in any respect, but it is a really, really strong, well-developed roasty note. And as I do a sort of a secondary smell, I like doing it in the package because it concentrates it rather than taking it out and smelling it. But as I take multiple breaths, it softens, it becomes more complex. There is some nuttiness in it. There's a little bit of sweetness, but it's not overly sweet. I'm not tasting anything remotely fruity or floral in the aroma, right? And then you pull the bar out of the package, and it's one of the more interesting molds that I have seen. It is in the shape of a cocoa pod, and they put their branding right there in the middle. It is unique. It is immediately recognizable. If you're doing a tasting where you have to break up the bars, it's it's a pain in the butt, right? To break up into even-sized pieces. I know this from experience because I've done tastings using this chocolate here at the Prescott Public Library. But nonetheless, it is just a beautiful mold and instantly recognizable. So I'm going to snap it. You know, it's well tempered. It's a crisp snap. I'm looking at the cross section. The cross section is clean. Not a whole lot of pinholes. It's been vibrated well. Actually, no visible pinholes, and there's nothing in the cross section that tells me anything that it might be grainy or anything like that. Quick bite. Now, if I smell the break, something to do. If I smell the break, right, the concentration of the roasted notes, which could be because it's been sitting in this package for a while, it's concentrated those aromas, right? The break has got it in there, but there's an underlying sort of nut skins. I don't know that I'll get the astringency associated with nut skins as I taste it. But then another thing to do is to take a piece and then rub your thumb on the back. And so what you're doing is you're warming the cocoa butter up and you're releasing aromas. And now that I've had a chance to smell it a couple of times, that complexity, which I said went from roasting into nuts, has got sort of a grassy herbaceous quality to it. So I'm intrigued to know, right? For those of you who have been following me and know about my pyramid tasting method, I have a sort of multi-point step in terms of how I think about biting and chewing and melting, which is I think that it's important to bite, to chew, and to let the chocolate melt in your mouth. The bite is going to tell you something about the texture. Chewing it a couple of times is going to tell you something else about the texture, and then letting it melt on your tongue, and then whirring it against the base of your top front teeth is going to give you another expression of texture. So I think it's really important to bite. Right? And the bite and the chew are what I would expect given the snap. Right? And as I chew and let it melt and rub it against the base of my teeth, it's a very, very technically well-constructed bar. I'm not getting any sense of texture. It's very, very clean, very well refined. So 65%, it's a sort of weird place. It's not 70%, which is what a lot of people go for. And coconut sugar is not as sweet as refined white sugar is usually. So the coconut sugar adds some complexity to the flavor of what it is that I'm tasting. It's not that taste is not neutral, but in this case, it's not overwhelming and present. I know what coconut sugar tastes like. I've tasted this particular coconut sugar, because I've spent quite a bit of time in the factory, and I'm aware of what that flavor is. But this is not overly sweet, and it tastes richer and darker than a 65%. Some people might think a 65% should taste. A 65% should taste a little sweeter. This is not there. The coconut sugar is well balanced. Right? I'm talking so that I'm letting the flavor sort of develop in my mouth over time, and that complexity that I talked about, sort of the roastiness. There is some complex. I don't know if it's fruit, but there is some complex, something that happens, right on the initial melt. There's a little bit of fruitiness back there, and brightness, which I think comes from that fruitiness. And then the flavor lingers in your mouth. It clears, right? It's just cocoa butter. There's no other fats in it. And it beats from roastiness. Um, there's that slight nuttiness, which I mentioned. That herbaceousness sort of comes in and out as well. And um, it's a bar that is readily eatable. If you wanted to sit down and eat the entire thing in one go, it would be possible, without paying attention, to eat the entire thing in one go. But at the same time, if you slow down and pay attention, and you think about how the flavor changes in your mouth, the bar rewards that attention, which is one of the things that I look for in a chocolate bar. Is do I want to have another piece right away? Right? Is it moreish? Would be another way to think about that. And is it something that if I'm going to slow down and think and pay attention to what it is that I'm eating, what it is that I'm tasting? So tasting is a conscious process. Eating is just consuming it without paying attention, without thinking about it. I've got this is a bar that rewards paying attention to it. You can sit and think on it, right? And it makes an enormous. It has a lasting impact, right, in terms of the flavor adventure that it takes you on. It's not a roller coaster, right? The highs are not super high, the lows are not super low, right? But there is this undulation to it, which for me makes it quite attractive. If you've tasted this bar and you have similar or very different um, impressions of it, and you might have been tasting a different batch number, so it may be slightly different from that point as well. Let me know. Go into the comments. Let me know what you think. If you tasted any of the Orinoco products, and let me know what you thought of them. Excuse me. You can go to the Orinoco website and order all of these products off the website. And if you ever come to Prescott, they're available in a number of places locally. The second one is from Patanemo, which is a producing area in Venezuela. Patanemo is derived from Paz Tenemos, which is Spanish for "we have peace," and it's on the coast. So it's on the coast of Venezuela, not far from where Chihuahua and Puerto Cabello are. So it's part of that very, very famous growing region. And the name Orinoco obviously comes from the Orinoco River, which is, I believe, the second largest river basin in South America after the Amazon. So 85%, again, open up the top. All right. What's interesting about this, different origin, obviously. So we're now in Venezuela and we've moved from the Dominican Republic. And even though this is an 85%, the roast component is much less predominant on the nose. It is there, but immediately we've got some additional complexity. And what this aroma tells me is that I should probably think about that kind of complexity on the taste. So it's giving me a harbinger of what it is that's to come. It is a little brighter and it is a little sweeter in that respect. There is some of that on the nose. And there's also something that smells like a red fruit. Is the predominant thing I get. And I'm not entirely sure what it is. Venezuelan chocolate is known, some origins are known for it. It is a single estate, and even though it tells you where it is, which is Patanemo, it doesn't mention, I don't see that it mentions the actual name of the estate that it's got. So much to anticipate. Of course, it's a beautiful bar. The mold is great. Tempering is solid. The aroma of the break is not as definite as it is in the package, which is to be expected. The bar has been in the package for, since it has been wrapped. And so I would expect it to accumulate all those aromas in the package. If I melt the back Mm. It's quite subtle. It's really interesting. I want to know if it's going to sort of eat like an 85%, or because of the genetics and the roast, whether it's going to be um, more accessible. The bite and the chew are exactly what I would expect them to be, given the temper and the break. A hit of astringency, it's fleeting. It just comes and it goes. Um, and the predominant flavor, at least as the chocolate is clearing out of the mouth, is a roasty note. So it doesn't have quite the complexity of the 65%. Um, but if you're looking for an accessible high cocoa content, right, you'll like the idea of an 85% for one reason or another. This is, a 3 ingredient chocolate bar. It's cocoa beans, coconut sugar, and cocoa butter. If you like the idea of a 3 ingredient bar, simple ingredients, nothing else added, you like the idea of high cocoa content, right? Because it's got the bromine in it, which has anti-aging, which has been shown to have anti-aging um, activity. You like the fact that higher cocoa solids, non-fat cocoa solids, means that more of the other good stuff, which has an effect on brain health and heart health and skin and blood vessel flexibility, the flavonols, flavonoids, all of those kinds of chemicals are there in higher concentration. Sometimes an 85% is rough, right, in terms of um, how it tastes in your mouth, right? It's very, very aggressive. You know that it's a very high cocoa content bar. And I don't know if you can hear me too, um, but this bar, mm, now that I have a lot of it in my mouth, there's wonderful creaminess in the middle of it. A little bit of salivation from um, some of the tannins that are in it bring out this hint of this fruit that I said that I was smelling at the very middle, um, and it fills the mouth. You can try to breathe in retronasally. Do this. Right? There is it is, even though it doesn't smell as heavily roasted as the 65% did initially. Um, the long finish does have this heavier roast component to it. Again, even though it does have this heavier roast component, it is not, in your face. I'm a high cocoa content. It's not. It's smooth and refined. And I'm just going to sit here for a few seconds. I'll continue to talk because I don't want too much dead air. But I'm letting it leave the mouth. Right, so it's sitting here. Um, the chocolate flavor um, is on the sides of my mouth. It's in the back of my throat, right? So as it's leaving, it's lingering, and so this one is a little less more ish. So it's staying in my mouth, and I've got the flavor in my mouth, and I'm not likely to go, oh my gosh, where's that chocolate flavor in my mouth? I need to get another bite, right? I could imagine this. This would be really, really good with the right coffee. Um, I could imagine grating it on top of a hot chocolate beverage, um, or grating it on top of like a tiramisu or some sort of dessert. That would be really good. Um, I think I might even go with a taleggio cheese. I think there's some really, really interesting um, um, flavor pairing ideas, or just pairing ideas that might be really interesting with this. So I think there's a lot that can be done with this. Oh, again, if you were to get something really fruity, I'm thinking of a quince paste or a guava paste or something like that, where this was part of it as a part of a dessert pairing. Um, not entirely. Oh, some rums. So I'm thinking some. So there's a lot to go on here as a base. It is strong enough to hold up to a lot of other to being eaten with a lot of other foods. And the cheese and aged cheese would be, I think, again, like a taleggio, um, would be a real interesting pairing with that if you're, if you're not vegan and you're not lactose intolerant. Um, mm, really, really interesting. Again, right? If you've tasted Orinoco chocolates before, if you've tasted this bar, um, if you've been here to Prescott and you visited with them, and didn't let me know about it, so we couldn't get together and have coffee, or something like that, you have some sort of impression. Maybe you met them. They were at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival last year. I think they're going back this year. There's the California Chocolate Festival in Reading. I believe they're going there again this year, later this year. The Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival is in April, and the Reading Festival, the California Chocolate Festival in Reading, excuse me, I believe is in October. So you have a chance to see them in other parts of the United States. But if you know them, let me know. I'd be interested in knowing your thoughts about this. So we've gone through two different origins, two different producing countries, the Dominican Republic and Venezuela, and we've gone through two straight chocolates, so unflavored chocolate, only 3 ingredient chocolates: cocoa beans, coconut sugar, and cocoa butter. The next bar is a 50% milk. No, it's a 50% gianduja, so it's a hazelnut bar. It's using beans from Patanemo. It says single origin rather than single estate, so I don't know if they are the same beans that was used for the 85%. And it's in a simple bar. The ingredients are cocoa beans, again late harvest maple sugar, hazelnuts, cocoa butter, Himalayan pink salt, and vanilla beans. So what they're doing is they're taking the nutty caramelly Patanemo cocoa. So it's not surprising that I got those aromas from the Patanemo in the 85%. And the initial aroma on this, it's doesn't say on the front, it says on the back 50%, right? The initial aroma on this is a hit of the nuttiness, which has got an underlay of the darker coconut sugar, not refined white sugar. It does smell a little sweet, which is what I would expect from a gianduja. So, and there are no dairy products on this. Often, if you have a lighter gianduja, it will have milk in it. It will be made with milk chocolate. This is a sort of medium dark, right? And you have to be really, really careful when you're making a bar like this, is that there is a maximum percentage of nut fat that you can add to this for the bar to be able to be tempered. So if you're doing a more traditional Torinese, from Torino in Italy, with the Piemonte is where gianduja originated, you might have somewhere around 35% hazelnuts in a product. Otherwise, you have so much fat it can't temper properly. This bar is crispier than many gianduja bars is, and so I think that the percentage of cocoa here, so we've got a 50%, 50% between the cocoa beans and the cocoa butter on this in terms of cocoa percentage, and so the nut percentage is going to be appropriate. It's gianduja is one of my favorite things in the world. If I like dark milk chocolates, and I think if you could do a dark milk, really good hazelnut bar, I don't know that I would necessarily go much further. I'm getting chocolate all over my computer here, but one of the things that I love about gianduja is the texture. Right? As much as the actual taste, right, of something, the texture, how it is as I bite through it. What is it like as I chew it? How it is as I let it melt. Um, it is that's what I'm looking for in a chocolate bar. Texture as much as anything else. So a two ingredient high non-fat cocoa solids bar, which is crispy and crunchy. Even if it is properly tempered, it comes out that way, and is a little crispier to bite through, and is a little harder to melt. Not my favorite chocolates. Sometimes, well, I will appreciate the taste, and appreciate the work that goes in them because you only have two ingredients. There's no place you can hide with it. I do like something that has a different texture, and a part of that is, you know, definitely due to my introduction into specialty chocolate was with the French maker Bona. And if there's one thing that Bona is known for, is they have a high cocoa butter a content in all of their chocolates, added cocoa butter in all of their chocolates, and that's that is what inspired me to get into the business. I do have to say that um, the coconut sugar here. Oh, I'm sorry, the maple sugar. I'm sorry, not the coconut sugar, the maple sugar, which is what is used in the bars. Excuse me. I've been saying coconut sugar. I mean maple sugar. Um, the maple sugar in this bar makes itself known. Um, this late harvest sugar, which is dried, um, is relatively dark, and it has a minerality associated with it, and it makes its presence known. Um, Here, it doesn't necessarily call out "I'm maple," mhm, unless you're very familiar with it. Um, but it is present. And I realized as I'm thinking about this, as I'm closing my eyes, that when I was talking about the 85%, I was talking about the coconut sugar, and that's completely wrong. It is maple sugar in this bar as well. And I have tasted the maple sugar. It's just that there's another product here, which is coconut sugar, and I'm getting ahead of myself when I'm talking about it. So it's not sweet. The texture of this is really, really wonderful. Um, I'm a huge fan of adding salt into every chocolate, not just this one. Um, the salt is going to counteract some bitterness, which is a good thing in many chocolates. Um, but in this particular case, right, this bar, the maple sugar makes itself known, right? And that may be something you like or you don't like. Um, but it is something, mm, again, texture is amazing. I really, really love it. Um, the texture. Um, um, Again, your mileage will vary. You may really love this, right? Um, you may not like it as much because of the maple sugar that's in it. But what you do know, right, is the beans come from a really interesting origin, um, that's made from a small company here in the United States that's looking to pay farmers equitably um, for the work that goes into producing the beans that they are using. Maple sugar is produced here in the United States, either Vermont or New Hampshire. I forget which one it is. Um, and it's just a beautifully um, crafted bar. So what would I say you might want to do with it? Um, so if I'm going to have a coffee with this, it is going to be a cappuccino. It is going to be a drink which has a lot of milk in it and steamed milk in it. I want that caramelly milk component. Grating this over cappuccino, grating this over the foam would be really good. Um, Uh, I'm trying to think about. I don't. Well, it's always possible to pair these with things. You don't necessarily need to or want to pair these with things, but um, where would I think this? If you've got something which is cook something, pumpkin, graham cracker, that sort of thing. This is going to be really, really good. Oh, if you've got a really good toasted marshmallow and a really good graham cracker, this would make the most amazing s'more in the world, right? Just absolutely amazing. And I think about that as doing it. It would be just yum, 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 yum. Right. So for me, I'm aware of the maple sugar. I like when makers play with ingredients which are not necessarily traditional in with the gianduja. For example, Guido Gobino makes a sea salt and olive oil cremino, um, which is a cube um, of gianduja, which is really, really wonderful. And so I think about the maple sugar in this context. I think this would be more mainstream, perhaps more accessible if they were using white sugar, but it wouldn't be as interesting and it wouldn't be as fun. And so I suggest that you approach this with an open mind. Should you decide to purchase it, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It's a really Moorish thing. I don't know if you saw me pick up and taste a number of pieces. When it's gone, I mean, uh, there's a little hint of the flavor even after having had some water. Um, but it is quite Moorish. The flavor is going to leave very quickly, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, I want some more of this. I, I want some more of this." I could easily. I mean, I love gianduja, and while it's not good for necessarily my waistline, I could easily see going through and consuming the entire bar in one sitting without a problem. Um, the fourth bar we're going to be tasting today is this one. It is a 50% goat milk with maple sugar. Again, it's using the same Patanemo cocoa, which was used for the gianduja bar. The pattern is inspired by Mexican, excuse me, otomi or otomi. That probably would be better from a Mexican Spanish pronunciation rather than a Japanese otomi, Japanese pronunciation. It's really a lovely bar packaging, and it says so on the back of the first bar we tasted. So the 65%, it does say 3 ingredients and it lists what the ingredients are. Right? In the 85%, it says 3 ingredients and it lists what the ingredients are. In the gianduja bar, it says 6 ingredients and it lists what they are. And in this bar, 5 ingredients. So cocoa beans, maple sugar, cocoa butter, goat milk, and Himalayan pink salt. And one of the reasons to use Himalayan pink salt is, number one, the minerality associated with it. It has lots of trace minerals in it. It is going to be better for you. Personally, I mean, just from your health perspective, the trace minerals are going to be really good for you. But also, that minerality is going to provide some roundness and depth and complexity to what you're adding to it in a way that a plain white salt is not going to do it. I mean, I'm here in Arizona, and so Redmond Real Salt is in Utah, so I love using them because they're a local producer rather than shipping it in all the way from the Himalayas. But if you're going to use salt, if you are a chocolate maker and you're going to use salt in your bar, and I recommend that every chocolate maker adds small amounts of salt to their bar. It will reduce bitterness. When the salt hits your tongue, it will open up the taste buds and make them more receptive to the other flavors that are in the chocolate. You don't want the bar to taste salty. Unless you're going for that as a main sort of deliverable in the flavor profile. So you're putting salt crystals on the back or something like that. But salt in chocolate is underrated. And it's something I often do when I've got a bar and I don't think the bar is like not quite there. I will just take a little bit of salt and go, ooh, it's it, and hand that to the maker if I'm with them and going, try this. So I do have a comment. So Andy LeBlanc, maple syrup is produced from Maine to North Dakota, but Vermont leads in production. Yeah, Andy, I sort of knew that. I spent quite a bit of time in Vermont. My kids went to summer camp in Colchester, which is north and a little bit east of Burlington. And I drove up there 3, 4, 5 times a summer for like 10 or 11 years in a row, and have been all the way into the North Kingdom. I just came back from New Hampshire on a quick trip. Yeah, it's just the range of maple products is quite amazing. And one thing you should know about it is that when you go into the store, you might want to use grade A maple, right? For applications like this, where you're looking to get something which is different in terms of complexity and to bring flavors, using other grades of maple syrup is probably where you want to go, and it's going to be less expensive as well. Often going to be less expensive, right? So just really, really quick there. So Andy, great question. Yeah, it's a maple sugar is something that can complement, right, a wide variety of products. Anything that has dairy in it, for example, anything that has nuts in it. Maple sugar is a late harvest, right? So it's going to be darker to begin with, and it's going to have this higher minerality. It's worth considering. So here's a quick one from Cricket, who says, "I'm starting a drinking hot chocolate business. What would you go with to make a Mexican hot chocolate, a Parisian drinking chocolate, and a Mubia hot chocolate?" Well, okay. So number one, Cricket, I have no idea what a Mubia, M-U-B-I-A, hot chocolate is. So if you can explain that, let me know, right? Let me know what you're doing. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that there are 3 different form factors that you might want to consider in doing this, right? So number one is going to be a powder. And in this particular case, if you want to do a little bit of market comparison, there is a company in Las Vegas, Nevada called Sip Extraordinary, Las Vegas Henderson, and Sip Exploration Point, Skip Extraordinary. It's run by a friend of mine and her sister, Enming Xu, somebody I've known since 2003. She used to be the coach of the American team for the Coupe du Monde de la Pâtisserie. I met her while I was working for the World Pastry Forum and the World Pastry Team Champions and the National Pastry Team Championships. Right, lovely person, and a really good example of a powdered hot chocolate. Now, if you're using a powder hot chocolate, you're mixing it either with water or with dairy. Okay, water or dairy, and what you need to consider is how much of this powder are you using in order to be able to deliver a kind of taste experience that you're looking for, right? So powders will have less fat in them. And so because they have less fat in them, they will have a very different mouthfeel than if you're working for something which is made from a grated chocolate, right? So if I'm thinking about a Mexican hot chocolate or a Mexican style hot chocolate, there are a couple of things. So we think of that Mexican style hot chocolate as number one, it's made from either a solid chocolate, right? Or it's made with grated chocolate, right? And the question becomes, what are the additional flavorings that we might find in a Mexican hot chocolate? So often they are cinnamon, and they are going to be ground almonds. If I go to Mayordomo in Oaxaca and I go and ask for a custom blend, they're going to refine it in front of me in a molino, and which is going to have stone grinding stones, and it's going to have a local vanilla. It's going to have cinnamon. It's going to have almonds, and it's going to have white sugar, and as well as the cocoa. One of the things that makes Oaxacan chocolate, and if you think of Abuelita and other Mexican brands that you might get in the United States, is the beans, number one, are unfermented. So it is what's called cacao lavado. The pulp is washed off the beans, and then dried, so there's no fermentation. And then they're very heavily roasted. They want to drive the nuttiness. So if I was thinking about a Mexican hot chocolate from a flavor profile, that is where I would go. And then it's a question of, what is the ratio of the chocolate, right? And so you've got all of the ingredients mixed into it, and there's going to be some fat, but not a huge amount of fat that's in there. And you ask the question, bars, right? Nibs, paste. The answer is yes, right? It's really all about, so if I get, for example, the abuelita, I've got a little disc, which is like this, and I can break it up into bits. And if I make in the number of sections, is it 6 sections or 8 sections? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked at it. And so what I can do is I can throw the number of sections I like for the thickness and flavor intensity that I want in the cup. So consider that, but think about those flavorings. The third format is going to be liquid. So is it in a bottle and I can squirt right into the bottom of into a cup and then add the liquid that I'm talking about, the liquid that I'm thinking. So it turns out that if you're okay, how you present it is going to be perhaps a little different depending upon the country you're talking about. So, for example, you say Mumbai. So, so when I talk about Mumbai, formerly Bombay, at least in English, you know, how do they consume this beverage in India? I don't know the answer to the question. I think of desserts as being mango lassi. I think of them as being milk based. I don't think of them necessarily as chocolate. But again, when I think about Mumbai, I'm thinking about what is the flavoring component? Is this going to be garam masala? Is it going, what are the flavoring components to go on? And so, is it something which is squeezable? Would it be a paste? I spoon it into the cup. I none of them is wrong, and all of them are right for different markets. And so I would pay attention. So put together what's called an MVP, a minimally viable product. You might have 2 or 3 variations. You might say, "Ooh, what if I do it as a paste? What if I do it as something which was more liquid? Right? What if I do it as a solid? Right?" And give it to your friends and people you don't know, and ask them what it is that they think. I can't do that. I don't know where you're selling this. I don't know how selling it. I don't know who you think your market is, and so I'm not. I can't get any more in that way. So this question is: are you going to buy completed chocolate, right, or are you going to buy paste, right, or are you going to buy nibs, right, and then refine everything in yourself? Again, that's not something I can tell you. Authentic, and I prefer genuine rather than authentic. But when you think about what is genuine or authentic when it comes to Mexico, as opposed to what is genuine or authentic when it comes to India, if you're thinking about Paris, you're thinking about drinking chocolate, right? And that specifically means just taking a bar of very refined chocolate, which is heavy in fat, and just melting it, right? The thing which makes sort of Parisian drinking chocolate Parisian, right, is that very, very thick mouthfeel, right? And so if you're going to deliver it, you need to deliver that mouthfeel. I don't have any guidance. I don't have any memory of any of the hot chocolate. I mean, I've been to Angelina, I've been to La Charlotte de Lille's, some of the best. I've been to Jean Paul Levin. I've had hot chocolate numerous times in many, many places in Paris, and I don't think of a flavoring in Paris. It's just dark chocolate, right? And it might be with milk, and it might be with water, but it is the mouthfeel, which is what makes Parisian drinking chocolate Parisian drinking chocolate. At this point, dispenser or other, I don't know what you mean by dispenser. I mean, are you making hot chocolate and you're serving finished hot chocolate to people, or are you putting together something that they can purchase from you and make at home? Those are 2 very different things. Angelina uses cocoa mass. That makes sense given what it is that they know. Unfortunately, La Charlotte de Lille, my hands down, my number one favorite place to have chocolate in all of Paris, closed down. But yeah, so so you're stumped on the cacao product. So the answer is try all of them, right? Try all of them and use the one that gives you the results that you're looking for. So it may be, if you're using something which is Parisian, you may use a different base than if you're doing something which is Mexican or you're doing something which is Mumbai. So that's what I would say. Don't think that you have to. Now, it may be easier from a manufacturing perspective to use one and not another, but I don't think you have to necessarily use the same base product, right? What you may want to do is just make sure that the delivery, so how people interact with it, is the same. So anyway, that's what I would go there. A little off topic, but it's a great set of questions, Cricket. And listen, if you like the advice, go over to the Chocolate Life, become a member. And if you'd like to have some private one-on-one consulting, you can go at one of the higher membership levels because they do come with coaching and consulting hours. And then I can be more specific. We can have a private conversation, and I can get you get to be a little more specific with what it is that you're looking for, based on where you are located in the world and where your market is. But go over to the Chocolate Life, become a member, support the work I do, like, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, or follow me on LinkedIn, or on Facebook. All of those things help what it is that I am doing here in Pod Safe Chocolate and Chocolate Life. So we got a little time left. Goat milk chocolate. Why goat milk? Because goat milk has an unusual flavor and it's not cow's milk, right? So many people who are sensitive to cow's milk are not sensitive to goat milk. And depending upon the goat milk, it gives this complex barney. When you think about goat cheese and what makes goat cheese, and the difference between a fresh goat cheese and an aged goat cheese, there is this real difference. So, man, again, so there's salt in here. It's like I can almost smell the salt, but goat milk is often richer and earthier than cow's milk is. And so I'm wondering if it is the combination of the salt and the goat's milk that I'm seeing there. Again, just a beautiful bar. It's a beautiful brown color. This is a 50%. It's using the same Patenemo beans, and they were looking for a luscious bar inspired by cajeta, which I believe is Argentinian, or dulce de leche, which would make, is cajeta Argentinian? Dulce de leche, I think of, but I think cajeta is specifically with goat's milk. Maybe put it that way. It's a dulce de leche specifically with goat's milk. I think that's the way it works. So, I mean, it's you know, if you stick your nose in the bag, it's just like, it's just redolent. It's rich. That's the number one. It's rich. So even though this is a 50%, it is a much sweeter than the Shanduya bar. They're going for a dulce de leche, which is a caramelized milk flavor, cajeta, caramelized goat's milk. And it is reminiscent of that. The texture is a little bit grainier, not quite sure why. It might be due to the texture of the goat's milk. It is almost certainly the texture of the goat's milk. But this is another Moorish bar. Right? I'm going here and I'm going, oh man, oh, I have another piece. Some people are afraid of getting bars with alternate dairy milks. They make camel milk bars, goat milk bars, and things like that. There's nothing to be scared of with this bar. I mean, it is, as I say, I just want another piece, and it's Friday. Which bar might not might not last the weekend. Mm. The texture is amazing. Um, if this were made with refined white sugar, it would be too sweet. The maple sugar here is combining with the goat's milk and the salt here, and it's bringing the sweetness down and delivering this richer, rounder mouthfeel. It's just like really, really lovely. Um, mm. Wow, that was nice. That was nice. And I hope it's been interesting for you. Let me know in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you like what it is that I'm doing. Go over the Chocolate Life, become a subscriber, and support the work I'm doing here. Now, finally, right, one of the things that, if you followed my work for any length of time, you know that I am a proponent of not thinking outside the box, but forgetting what boxes are. Rather than calling yourself a bean to bar chocolate maker and making bars or things like bars, what you want to say is, oh, I'm a chocolate maker. What can I make with the chocolate that I make? Right. And in this day and age where cocoa is relatively very expensive, cocoa beans, cocoa butter, all the derivatives, relatively very expensive, what can you do, right, that has a lower cost of ingredients that will take you and put you in another part? If you were to think about grocery, will put you someplace else, right? You're not necessarily got your bars next to everybody else's bars. How do you take a product and perhaps put it somewhere else? Or if you are by the chocolate bars, you're in an area where there are fewer competitors. And this is one of the things that Orinoco has done. They have another business, which is consulting to help small chocolate makers. So as a matter of fact, Cricket, if you wanted to, you could go to Orinoco. They have a side business called Cacao Consulting, and they could help you with all of your new product development questions. If that's of interest to you, let me know. I'll introduce you to them. It will cost you something, but you might get to market much, much faster. And they would be able to do all the primary initial manufacturing for you. So they'd be able to help you with the packaging, get the product into the packaging, right? And then give you, again, minimum products that you can go and test. And then when you need to get a product, when you have customers, they can help you sell it. And then if you get really, really successful, they can turn you over to somebody who can manufacture it at scale. So if that's something, again, become a member, send me an email, and you can ask me, and I will do that introduction for you. And they're just down the road, so I could be involved with it as well, which would be a lot of fun. But finally, let's take a look. So what they've done is they've developed a new brand. They call it Truffa Treat. And the Truffa Treat line consists of a number of nut pastes. Now, the one I have today is their creamy hazelnut nut paste. They call it a classic hazelnut spread. They say made better. And it is, in fact, just a 4-ingredient products. It has hazelnuts, coconut sugar, cocoa powder, and cacao nibs. So that's the entire product base. And it reminds me, so it not reminds, it is what the Italians would call a spalmabile. So you can go take a look at the texture. Right? So this is very, very different from a product like Nutella. It has no hydrogenated fats. It has no palm oil. Right? It is cocoa butter. This is the one which is sweetened with coconut sugar. Hazelnuts. Hazelnuts are the number 1 ingredient. Coconut sugar is number 2. Cocoa powder is number 3. And cocoa nibs, cacao nibs is the number 4. There's no added cocoa butter in here. So this is just like the fact that hazelnuts, right, have got a lot of fat in them, and they're using cacao powder because the cacao powder, it may be a low-fat, unalkalized powder. And Orinoco is not producing the cocoa powder in-house. So they don't produce the cocoa butter in-house either. But what you've got is spalmabile, right? The Italian version. I've had some amazing spalm. I'm like, one of my favorites is from Genoa. I have just amazing, right? And so I'm going to taste it. This is not the recommended. Oh, excuse me. This is not the recommended way for for eating this product. Yeah. But what you have is something that you can spread very, very thinly, perhaps thinner than a Nutella, thicker than a Vegemite or a Marmite on a sandwich. And you've got something that you could dip fruit into, drip strawberry, put over bananas, put in with, so it's just a very, very versatile spread. Now, what I will say is that the coconut sugar is at present here. And again, if you're used to the clean flavor of refined white sugar, this may be an acquired taste for you. But this is, the texture on this is wonderful, like a natural peanut butter or a nut butter, almond butter, or some other butter, cashew butter you're going to get. You're going to have to stir this to incorporate it properly. But this is the chocolate equivalent of an amazing cheese pull. So just if you're looking for a product and you want to make, I mean, I could just sit here. I may do this later. I just may do this as a vertical TikTok video and just do this over and over again and just take a look and just this is it. This is the entire video, is just watching this go like that. Right? Would you watch it? I mean, what's the ASMR soundtrack, right, behind this? I'm going to do this, by the way. I'm going to do this later today. I'm just going to shoot a video and I'm going to go OMG. Anyway, that's it. Again, it's nut forward. It's not hugely chocolate. The nibs are there. They're refined in to provide some additional roundness to what it is that goes on to the cocoa powder. Because you can control the roast on it where you can't control the roast on the cocoa powder. It's just a great, great, great product to do it. Again, it's not using refined white sugar. There is going to be right, what do I think about this? Right, but it's a really, really lovely product. Your kids will love, if you have small children, your kids will love this product. Your kids will love the Gianduja product. Right? They might love the goat's milk chocolate too. If you didn't tell them it was goat's milk to begin with, after you give it to them, and they go, "Ew, mommy, no, daddy, no." Right? But it would broaden their horizons, and it would be interesting. Oh, I could think of, the goat's milk chocolate on a cheese board would be absolutely amazing, along with maybe the 85%. I can really, really see it being used that way. We got one more comment before the end of the day. We're running a little long, but I'm happy to do that. When tasting chocolate, what are the dynamics between nasal breathing, or do you breathe through your nose and out simultaneously? Can we taste well without nose breathing? Okay, so Andy, what we call flavor is the combination of taste, right? Taste buds in the tongue and in the mouth, and aromas, which we sense primarily in the nose. Right? So what I can do, I'm just taking one of the bars, right? There is a difference. Right? Here's the bar. There's a difference between breathing in the nose. Oh my gosh, this is the hazelnut chocolate. And I'm going, God, I love the smell of roasted hazelnuts in the morning, in the daytime, in the evening. I love the smell of roasted hazelnuts. A good Piemonte, TGP. One of my favorite aromas outside of roasting cocoa. Right? You're going to get one sense here. This is going to give you one sense, right? If you put something in your mouth and then guppy, as you're breathing in, retronasal, you're going to get a different aroma. It's going to be more complex. Right? And one of the reasons why it's going to be more complex with respect to chocolate is what you're doing with the aroma molecules that are locked up into the chocolate. What you're doing is you're warming them up in your mouth, right? And you're not only warming them up, but your saliva contains enzymes and other chemicals, which are breaking these down, something called striker reactions, right? And they're building complex layers of flavor. And as you breathe in, right, again, through your mouth, through your nose, right, you're going to get a different, more complex set of aromas, because there's a lot more for the aroma receptors in your nose to deal with than if you just pick it up this way when the chocolate's not melted. Does that make sense? Does that help answer to the question? You want to do both, right? You want to get an initial aroma perception, and this is where tasting, right, which is a conscious process. What am I smelling when I do this versus what am I smelling, once the chocolate is in my mouth? You need to do both of them. Can you taste well without nose breathing? So it is sort of a truism, and as a matter of fact, it's more than a truism. It is established fact that if you cannot smell, right, you lose your sense of smell. You have anosmia, which might have been brought on by COVID. I have a friend of mine who was born without a sense of smell. I have other friends who contracted anosmia after coming down with COVID. So your experience is a fraction of what it would be if you could smell. Now, it's not that you don't taste, right? You can't get some taste of what it is that you're eating, but right, it is shadowed. It might be like a black and white version as opposed to a full color version. Might be a good way of thinking about the differences. You're not completely unable to taste, but it's like, it's like Dorothy walking through the door of the house as it's landed in Oz, and she's in black and white world, and she's opened up the door and she's in Technicolor world. Right? Think about that metaphor in your brain, and that might be the difference between the two. You cannot experience the full range of aromas, and therefore your experience of the full flavor of what it is that you're consuming is incomplete, right? If you can't smell, right? You smell with your nose. But again, when it comes to assessing the aroma of something, you have smelling it from out here, right? And then smelling it from within your mouth. But guppying, oxygenating it, and breathing. So you're going to want to do both if you want to do it. So thanks. Watching me taste is interesting and entertaining. I hope it's not too crazy with all the chocolate and noise and things like that. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. And that's it for today with what it is that I had to say. It's been fun tasting these chocolates. As I wrote in the post for today's episode, I did not taste any of the chocolate bars beforehand. Right? I opened them up. Again, I cut the tops off, but my first experience with these bars was this morning, although I had tasted the Spalmabile when I was at the factory last week. So I did have a sense for what it was like before. I tasted it this morning. But otherwise, I wanted my experiences to be untempered by previous experience with what it is that goes on. If you're interested in purchasing any of the chocolate, you can go down, scroll down, right? And you can click on this link. It will take you to the Orinoco chocolate page. You can go to the shopping cart, find your favorite. You don't actually have to go to the Truffa Treats section. You can find the Truffa Treats here, and here are all the bars that are currently available. There are no bad bars. I mean, they do a great job. The Coco Camilli is quite interesting. The number 3 bar is a blend of 3 different origins. They do a Merida, which is actually a really, really lovely bar as well. So you can go there and you can purchase. And I am not getting any commission here. These are friends of mine who are doing good work, and they're right down the road. And I love having the ability to walk down there, see what it is they're doing, talk with them about what it is that they're doing. And I'm really, really happy. I mean, they're the reason, one of the main reasons why I moved to Prescott, Arizona in 2023 was to work with these guys. And I'm really, really happy that I'm here, and I'm happy to have an opportunity to share what's going on. And with that, I also want to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. If you are not a member, please go to the homepage of the Chocolate Life, actually any page of the Chocolate Life in the top nav, and click on the join button. There's always a free membership tier. But there are premium memberships starting at $5 a month or $42 a year. If you contribute at a higher level, it comes with coaching and consulting hours, and I can help you on your projects. If you just like a third party to take a look at what you're doing and give you some ideas. Also notice, I have some ads. I've always been able to run ads. Don't always have ads to run, but if you are interested, there's a post having to do with molds. And so there's 50% off some polycarbonate molds. This is a service that I run, classifieds services I run on the Chocolate Life. And also, if you are not yet aware of the Craft Chocolate Challenge, let me see if I can get the ad for the Craft Chocolate Challenge. There they are. Craft Chocolate Challenge is a free competition, right, where feedback is the primary aspect of it. If you click on this, you'll go to the Craft Chocolate Challenge homepage, and you can enter. The deadline for entering is the February the 21st. You need to have the samples by February 28th, but you can enter. It's free to enter. Our goal is, as judges, is to provide you with feedback. Again, the cost to enter is you need to provide the chocolate bars and you need to ship them to Dustin. That's it. You need to ship them to Rushville, Indiana. That's the entire price of participating in it. And every single one of the judges will taste your bars, and every single judge will give you feedback on your bars. There are only 4 categories. So plain and flavored dark, plain and flavored milk, plain and flavored white, and inclusions. That's it. There are only 4 categories. And you can only enter 2 bars and no more than 1 bar per category. So no category stuffing, right? This is all about providing feedback. And you do get an amazing, amazing award. And you can go back and you can say, okay, here, season 4 was 2025. Here are all the winners, and here who the judges are. So it's a great competition. I've been a judge for seasons 2, 3, and 4. I will be a judge for season 5. If you're interested in participating, again, there is no charge to participate. And with that, that's the end of today's episodes. I want to thank everybody for being here today, and to remind everybody as we head out for the weekend, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you are doing it wrong. Ciao, everyone, until I see you again.